All right. Sorry, team. A couple minutes late. Welcome to Full Circle, episode 52, where we are going to, once again, talk about some theme forces. Real quick, so I don't want to make too much delay in getting going. Apologies, no green screen tonight. I was busy with a project in the house beforehand. We're doing some more stuff in the basement with painting and whatnot, so it just didn't happen this time. Sorry. Oh, that's not great though. I think that's actually better. Oh yeah, much better. All right. So, apologies for all that. This week we're going to talk about another theme force, the third in our installment of 5, because there are 5 theme forces for Circle right now. Real quick on the news. 2 things I want to talk about. One, I put a couple posts out there for this. I'm still mulling it over. But what I'm thinking about, and this won't apply to the Theme Force series, but what I'm thinking about potentially doing is going to potentially smaller chunks of content that come out a little bit more irregularly, or maybe more regularly, but not necessarily always at the same time of like Wednesday, like I've been doing. Where sort of I look at the format that I started the show with, and where I've done like an episode where I did like 3 model/unit entries for Circle. What I'm thinking about doing instead is doing a single. So like, let's say one of the things I haven't talked about yet is Warpborn Skinwalkers, for example. And let's say when I do them, instead of having an episode where I do Skinwalkers and Kaya 1 and something else potentially, right? And I take, 30 to 60 minutes, instead talking just about Skinwalkers, and maybe they take, depending on the unit and what it is and stuff, maybe it takes, 5 to 15 minutes, and we talk just about that. And then when people are looking for videos, they can just find that specific thing. I can title it and say that's what I'm talking about. There'll still be news type episodes. There'll still be some discussion types. So I'm mulling that around. We'll see. That won't happen probably until I'm done with this series, or this series will at least continue in this format, and that would be an addition, and then we'll sort of see where it goes from there. So just something I'm thinking about. We will see where that takes us. Second bit of news is the ADR has been announced for Season 7. So Season 7 will start January 1st. It will probably, they were a little vague, so I'm assuming it will run through whatever the date of Lock and Load is, again in July, assuming Lock and Load is again in July. Yeah, so that will cover Champions, that will cover Masters if you play 2 casters off that list. For me, it's much more pertinent to Champions. I, in general, think I don't like the 40 points isn't worth the trade-off in what Warlocks I have to pick, generally. That's just how I've seen it. So pertinent to Circle, we are once again getting Tanith, and then joining her this season will be Chromac 2, Chromac Champion of the Worm, Baldur the Stonecleaver, which is Baldur 1, and Mosar. So pretty much highlighting a trend of the fact that BattleBox casters are going to be a mainstay in the rotation, which is fine. And then also, sort of a trend of we're not really seeing the like top, at least for Circle, the top of the line ones. I'm going to do another episode at another time and really delve a little more into that. I need to give it a little more thought. I need to look at what the other casters do, because I kind of want to approach it from a Champions mindset, and sort of like what might be strong, what might not be strong, what you want to think about as you prepare your Champions lists, and things like that. I don't know. I may do some thinking about like if you want to pair them up for Masters, but at the moment my recommendation probably in Circle is to stick with I don't think there's a pairing in ADR of 2 casters, even with the sideboarding Vanguard option, that is stronger than just playing some of our other casters. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be compelling and interesting to play for Champions. So anyway, Without further ado, let me get into trusty war room here. Trusty. And let's talk about Devourer's Host. So I've been saying this in every episode, but the format this is going to follow basically is I'm going to read what the theme force is. We're going to talk about what the benefits are. We're going to talk maybe about some of the models that are included. I'm going to step through each of the warlocks and talk about how they would approach playing this theme, or if they even should, and then and maybe some other miscellaneous in there as well. And then at the end, if there's time, we'll do a little wish listing for some future stuff. So anyways, Devourer's Host. To sow terror and reap death, blackclads who embrace the primal aspect of Orboros turn to the Tharn. With murderous howls, Tharn warriors charge from the darkest forests to strike fear into their enemies' hearts before ripping them out and devouring them whole. These gruesome, gore-streaked combatants run side by side with all manner of beasts intent on slaking their thirst on the blood of Circle's foes. Theirs is a history of violence, and their motivations for war do not stray beyond devotion to the Devourer and an attunement with the basest of instincts. That's some pretty intense stuff. Composition rules. Army can be made using the following. All Circle Warlocks, living non-character war beasts, Getorics, Tharn model / units, the Death Wolves, Shifting Stone units, Gallows Grove solos, and Lord of the Feast. The benefits are this army can also include 1 minion solo and 1 minion unit that will work for Circle. These models can be included even if they have the Partisan Circle special rule. Minion units in the army can include attachments. Next, for every full 20 points of Tharn models / units in the army, you can add 1 Tharn command attachment or 1 small or medium-based Tharn solo to the army free of cost. Free models do not count toward the total point cost of Tharn / models in the army when calculating this bonus. Next, Circle War Beasts in this army gain snacking. And snacking says when a model with snacking boxes a living model with a melee attack, it can choose to remove the box model from play. When it does, the model snacking can remove D3 damage points. And finally, for every full 10 points of Tharn models / units in this army, you can give 1 corpse token to a model with Heart Eater after both players have deployed their models, but before the start of the game. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits real quick, just to be clear. So minion minion unit solo option. Nothing new there. We'll maybe talk on a sort of case-by-case basis what makes sense. But for the most part, the models that make sense in other lists make sense here too. Special caveats to Eilish, who is very good, especially if you're talking about your Crickstrap. Lanissa Rissel, because you can't take Black-Clad Wayfarers in here, and Hunter's Mark can be pretty strong. Swamp Gobbler is always good. Up and coming also, some of these being able to take the Gatorman, what is it called? Spirit Cauldron and Gatorman, something like that. Anyways, it's a unit of 2 models, and it can dole out corpse tokens basically. So that sort of lessens the stress on that last benefit that I listed, if you can take that as your minion option. So you may have 5 less points in some regard, but then like you're also going to have better access to corpses anyways throughout the game if you can keep it safe and so forth. So that's something to consider. So just to highlight a few things real quick, snacking, the way snacking works is you remove the model from play regardless of, I don't think it's a choice even. Sorry, you can choose to remove the box model from play. So it is a choice. You can choose to RFP the model first. Second, if you do RFP the model, you heal. But being damaged is no longer a requisite for snacking to remove from play. So in Mark II, you used to have to like be damaged and then snacking would remove something from play. In Mark III, you choose if you want to RFP the model. If you do RFP the model, then you can heal. Simple as that. So very relevant. All the beasts here have snacking. It's going to come up to a greater or lesser degree in games. I've probably forgotten it more than I should. It's a very, very good benefit. Try to remember it when you're playing these lists. Absolutely. And then let's talk about the other benefits real quick. So for every 20 full points of Tharn models and units. So something to keep in mind there is some of the things listed that you can take here are not Tharn. The Deathwolves are not Tharn. Lord of the Feast is not a Tharn model. Gallows Groves are not Tharn. Shifting Stones are not Tharn. Your battle group is not Tharn. Even Getterix is not tagged as a Tharn model. So that's going to come up. So you have to have 20 points of Tharn. And then you can also only take Tharn, medium or small base, solos or command attachments with this. So what that means is that does not give you Lord of the Feast for free. What the models that are eligible, it doesn't give you a Tharn Wolf Rider Champion for free. So the models eligible to be taken for free are the Tharn Ravager Chieftain, who's the attachment for the Ravagers, the Tharn Whitemane, or Tharn Ravager Whitemane, who's a solo, the Tharn Ravager Shaman, who's a solo, Nuala the Huntress, who's the command attachment for the Blood Trackers, the Tharn Bloodweaver Night Witch. That's it. So those are the models you can take for free. And then additionally, when at the bottom we talk about for every 10 full points of Tharn models in the unit, you can give a Corpse Token model with Heart Eater. So now that does not specify Tharn for who can get the corpses, but it does specify that you need Tharn to generate corpses. So in theory, you could play 75 full points. It also doesn't specify that the free ones don't count toward the benefit. So you could theoretically, if you chose to, play 75 points, so your full non-battle group allotment of points as Tharn models, and then take 3 free 5-point solos. And so all the solos I listed are all the medium-based solos and command attachments are 5 points. So the Shaman, the Whitemane, and the Chieftain are 5 points. The Night Witch and Nuala are 4. So you could take 75 points. You theoretically could get then your 3 free 5-point solos to take you to 90 points of Tharn, and you would get 9 corpses that you could divvy out as you choose. Important note there too: you can put multiple. You can't go over the limit of corpses that a model can have, but you can put multiple corpses on any given model. So it's not like you have to put one on. If you have 9 in my previous example, you don't have to put 1 corpse on 9 models. You can, but you could also put 3 corpses on 3 models. Okay. So that's important. And then the next thing is, it also doesn't specify that the models with Heart Eater must be Tharn. So if you bring Lord of the Feast or you bring the Death Wolves in your list, you can put corpses on them. In fact, at present, that's really a strategy that I would recommend. So let's talk about that a little bit. This theme, one of the big strengths of this theme is being able to get Death Wolves on the table with corpse tokens to start out the game. And then, or Lord of the Feast, similarly. And then as you go down in points, sort of the benefits, how you're going to use that's going to change. So on the outset, like you can be playing, and it doesn't matter what kind of Tharn you're playing. So you could just play nothing but like Wolf Riders and Bloodweavers and Blood Trackers and get corpses and then put those on your Death Wolves, right? You also could play nothing but Ravagers, for example, who all have corpses, and you can choose kind of where to put those corpses. I've had the most benefit if I play the Death Wolves. I feel like they need at least 5 corpses to start the game to make that sort of exchange worthwhile. Ideally more. I think 6, 7, or 8 is really strong, and it is impossible to get 9 with them because even if you did what I said before, the Death Wolves are 9 points that don't count towards your total. So at most you would have 81, and so you could get 8 corpses. When I talk about Kruger 1, we'll talk about that. That's the list I've done that with, but you could do that with a few others as well. If you have less than that, I would start looking at some of your other options for solos to apply corpses to. So and one caveat when we get to Chromite 2 that I'll talk about. So Lord of the Feast, who a lot of people are very down on, and I honestly I would love to see him get some. Seeing some of the other 6-point solos that have come out in the game kind of in the last year, I'd love to see them revisit him and maybe look at his interactions a little bit. But That said, when he starts the game with 3 corpses, with a caster that has some access to some buffs, he actually is a lot stronger than you would think. He's a 12-17 with 8 wounds and stealth, which by itself already is very good. He has a lot of potential to disrupt some stuff. He can actually kill a decent number of models in a turn if you can position him very well. And he can kind of just, in general, be very frustrating for your opponent. Also, somebody who's not paying attention. So, like, I've done this with Unatu, for example, but there's other casters that potentially could do it as well. If you're not paying attention, you have him with 3 corpses, you put him in a shifting stone triangle. He has an 18-inch threat range. And if you, like, usually you don't want to risk Rat 7 on something that's, even with, like, something like Hand of Fate or some other way to boost his ability to hit. Like, even if you do that, you don't want, you want to try to hit something that's, like, you need a 7 or less to hit. But if you do, and they don't camp enough, and they're out of position, like, they have to respect that threat, which means they need to worry about where they're sitting, or how many focus they have, or what other protections are around them, because he will drop. I mean, he's not going to kill, like, the Butcher. The math on that probably isn't there. But, like, I had a game where I did that, and bottom of 1, he had moved up Damiano, and there was a freebooter, like, right next to him. So I Ravened the freebooter, went into the back arc of Damiano, made 4 melee attacks, and killed it. So, and there were things he could have done to avoid that, but, you know, so it's just something that you need to watch out for. So anyways, he's another good option for the list to put corpses on. If you're not going to do that, I have not really experimented with just, like, spreading corpses out among Ravagers, or among, like, some Ravagers. So I don't honestly know if that is worth doing. Keep in mind, corpse tokens can only be used to buy melee attacks or boost melee attack or melee damage rolls. So I actually would really recommend them on something like Blood Pack, or just Blood Pack for their range damage, if you could use them for that purpose, but just note that you can't. And then the other thing that I've done, and I'll talk about it a little bit, is I think the Thorn Ravager Whitemane is actually a pretty decent choice for some corpses, and the Shaman's not bad either. They're both the Whitemane's mat 8, the Shaman's mat 7. The Shaman being able to boost to make sure that he can get a kill, or have an extra attack in case he needs to get a kill, so then he can cast, so he can trigger Battle Wizard is pretty good. And then the Whitemane being able to chew his way through models, it means, you know, like, he can afford to miss, or, like, in a game where they don't have a lot of infantry to do that with, you can put him on a harder target, and he can get multiple boosted damage rolls, things like that. So, those are sort of your corpse options. So, as far as composition in the list, keep in mind we're looking at living war beasts in this theme. So you're going to want to be focusing around that. I think there's some obvious casters that'll be left out, as you'll see when we go through that. Getorix being in this theme is obviously very strong. He's one of our hardest hitting and tankiest war beasts, sort of both. And being able to have him in the list, especially if you go a little more infantry heavy, to sort of like anchor, can be very strong. And again, with snacking, he has that as one of his warps, which you should never ever choose. So now you can always warp strength or murderous if you know you need to remove something from play. So that's really strong. But, you know, our living war beasts are what you're going to want to be looking at here. So warp wolves, satyrs potentially, etc. There's Griffin's Roost painting back there. So anyways, so now I'm just going to go ahead, I think, and we'll start going through some of the casters and kind of how you approach it. So just actually one more thing, just to throw out there. So I think that there's many different ways to compose this list. As I said, I think you look at where your corpses are going to go. You look at what your composition is going to look like, why you're playing in the theme. So, you know, sometimes the corpses are going to be a very minor aspect of the list, and sometimes they're going to be like the purpose of the list, right? So if you're playing a lot of female Tharn, for example, you're going to want more of You know, the corpses may come as a secondary benefit, or you may just try to load them on Death Wolves if the points work out or the list works out that way. Whereas some other lists are going to focus on just like maximizing sort of like your Ravager footprint and seeing how that plays out for you. So, be that as it may, let's get into some of the casters. So, Baldur the Stonecleaver, Baldur 1, is, I think he has some potential in this theme. I have played him some in the theme. The one thing I don't really... The only negative thing that I'll say about Baldur is because he's speed 5 and Ravagers are much faster, that sometimes they're sort of outpacing him a little bit was what I was finding, and it's kind of hard to protect him. But he does have a lot of benefits for this team, so I think you focus... you can go a lot of different directions. So Solid Ground is a great spell for keeping the female Tharn, so the Blood Reavers and Blood Trackers, from dying to blast damage, which is sort of one of the only ways that they can die, because you know, their stealth, their defense 14. His feat also can help you sort of achieve the alpha by putting the rough terrain out there that can't be ignored, by giving cover to any of these models. Sort of get one pretty strong turn against range attacks sometimes. You can get the alpha on some melee attacks. He has Rapid Growth, which is the 4-inch forest. Wormwood has the same spell. And that's really good for multiple reasons. Obviously, you can block line of sight. You can leave it in place, especially with the new terrain being more populated. You can often get a good position to sort of hide a lot of your army, and the Ravagers don't care. They can charge through it. You can also use it defensively by putting it where your Ravagers are going to be, so they get that +2 defense against melee attacks, which can be pretty pertinent. Stone Skin's a really interesting buff. The speed penalty is very, very relevant. One of the strong things about the options in this theme are the speed, right? Ravagers are speed 6 with 2-inch melee and Vengeance, which means they can threaten about 14 inches, roughly speaking. Tharn Wolf Riders go to 13 inches just all the time, as well as, pardon me, as well as having throw, so they actually can threaten 19 with their assaults if they need to. Blood Trackers, same thing. They threaten 14 with the walk and throw. They threaten 10.5 with, pardon me. Excuse me. They threaten 10.5 with the with their charges. Same with the Blood Weavers. Blood Pack threaten the same assault distance as the Wolf Riders. Death Wolves, it depends. Lord of the Feast depends. The Solos, it depends. So Baldur's really good. He also, with the no knockdown, if you bring Ravagers, you get no knockdown tough Ravagers without having to position your Shamans, so that gives you room to take more White Mains or more other things, or balance your list differently, which is nice. Stone Skin's a tricky buff, though, and obviously the plus your strength and armor can be really important. It makes your Ravagers like POW 15, armor 17, but it is at the cost of a defense and a speed, and you know, so getting in those start ranges can be a little bit tricky too. So Baldur, again, I think is a pardon me. I think as we talk through the themes, you're going to find, I think so far I've said Baldur 1 can be played with any of them, and I still believe that. So that's Baldur 1. Baldur 2, I initially would have told you is not what I'm looking for in this theme. But I have seen a list recently, and I won't go into detail because it's not my list, but I think if you're going to play Baldur 2, the focus here is really, first of all, you still get Megalith, and Megalith gets snacking of all things, which is pretty interesting. But what it does allow you, it's the only theme that allows Baldur to play Getorix with Baldur 2. So, because he's not included in any of the other themes, and he's Chromax Beast, not Baldur. So Baldur can still take Megalith, which is his most essential piece. You can take Getorix, which is incredibly good with him, especially if the Spiny Growth change to cost 1 goes through. But even at 2, Getorix can be a sort of functionally 16, 22 behind a wall. You can still bring Wrong Eye and Snapjaw because of the change to the minion benefit in the theme. Ferals are still very strong in that theme. Again, snacking helps these beasts that are already very tanky stay up the whole game. And then you can play some other Tharn in the list, right? So like Bloodweavers, if you feel like you need magic weapons or you need a certain number of bodies, you could probably bring some number of Ravagers if you want sort of hardier models. And then the feat is going to go pretty well with something like Ravagers. I would take them up to armor. They'd be 13, 18s, no knockdown. It's not terrible. It gives you some footprint on the table. Gives your opponent something else, basically, they have to focus on while they literally can't kill your battle group. So some potential there. It's not my favorite place for this theme by any means. I'll be very interested to see if the list that I saw for it, if that person gives that a try, or if I can see any battle reports, either video or otherwise with it. But I thought it was very compelling, and the Getorix argument is certainly very compelling. We talked a little bit in Call of the Wild where you would maybe play that theme because you still get Megalith and you could take some of the living heavies. And you sort of still get that here. But he doesn't benefit the infantry nearly as much, so that's something to keep in mind. Bradigus Thorol the Rune Carver. No go. Can't play him. You can only take living beasts. He can only take stone beasts. We're at an impasse. Unless he gets a character gargantuan. That is at least 25 points or something like that. Then we'll revisit. Next is Grail the Farstrider. And this one's interesting. So the first thing you would say is, obviously Grail wants to play in the Wild Hunt, which we haven't gotten to, but that's the Wolfsworn theme, and that's what Grail is. The first thing you'd say is, obviously Grail wants to play in the Wild Hunt. However, I've talked to a few people who've played him in this theme, and I'm actually very, very interested in how it plays. So just to go over some of the benefits that it has. Hi, Linda. So he has a kit that very much benefits infantry. So the only thing you're not going to get a lot of benefit out of with him is his, I just forgot the name of the ability. I'm going to look it up. And his Tactician ability. That's the word I couldn't come up with. So Tactician Wolfsworn, the only thing in the list that is really going to benefit from that is the Death Wolves. It's not nothing, but that benefit is going to be a lot lower. And obviously there's some pieces that benefit him that you can't take, such as Wolflord Morag. On the other hand, the benefits for the theme, or for his list, is he's really all about infantry for the most part. So you get Death March, which is +2 mat and Vengeance, +2 mat on, say, Bloodweavers or Blood Trackers, or even the +2 mat on Ravagers can be very, very relevant. Vengeance would be replicated with Ravagers, but otherwise it's a very good benefit. So, and like Blood Trackers, it's kind of amazing, right? You kill one Blood Tracker, and then they have I said 14-inch with the throws earlier, and now you're talking about a 17-inch threat. Wolf Riders potentially going up to 22 with assaults, or a little bit, what is it with melee? It would be 16 inches in melee. So, like, that's pretty relevant, and then +2 mat on top of it also makes their impact attacks pretty strong. Potentially something like on the Blood Pack, on the Blood Pack could be interesting. They get longer range as well, and etc. Death Wolves can be pretty interesting. All of them getting +2 mat is really strong. The Vengeance can be triggered without killing them because of how corpses work. It's a really good benefit there. And then his other spell is Storm Rager. And Storm Rager can go on a handful of different models in the list and be very strong. Pretty much any of the Death Wolves, I would say Tala or Skull specifically, but any of them take that buff very well. Grail himself is always a fine target for it. Thar Ravager Whitemane is a pretty good target for it. Lord of the Feast is still a good target for it, etc. And then from there, Grail has Gallows, which can help with more threat range help. His feat is, if you kill a model, another model can advance 3 inches, and it's stealth for everything. So, like, Ravagers love stealth. etc. And then he also has Wind Blast, which this isn't specific to this list, but situationally, being able to turn off range attacks in certain positions can, again, be very strong. So I think while you initially would not look at Grail as somebody you want to play with this theme, because it just doesn't feel right, still would be something of some benefit. So I would consider Grail. I think also he likes having infantry he can sort of like wade through. Living Beasts are fine with him. I do think there's some benefit to some like, and we'll talk about this maybe when I get to the Wolfsworn list, but I mean, Wold Wardens are probably good with him because of Gallows, but I think there's certainly benefit to just playing Living Beasts. I think Getterics would be fine, Stalkers would be fine, Purebloods are great. He really likes the Pureblood Animus for himself, actually, too, so that's another good place to live. Anyways, moving right along. No, these are alphabetically out of order. So we have, I'm just going to hit all three of these at once. We have Kaya the Wildborn, Kaya the Moonhunter, and Kaya the Wild Heart. You could choose to play these in this theme. I don't think you're really going to be maximizing your benefits by doing so. Occultation on Kaya 1 is really interesting on something like Ravagers or Wolf Riders, but since you need more than like one unit, only one instance of Occultation is not that great. And I think if you need that stealth, you're better off using Grail and then using the feat. Kaya 2 is really all about our battle group. Kaya 3's feat benefits us, Fog of War benefits us, the Death Wolves do have Prowl. And then the +2 defense or +4 is very relevant, but that is pretty much all she's bringing to the table here. So I don't love that. I think Kaya 3 wants Beast. I think Kaya 2 wants Beast. I don't see any of them playing in this theme. So certainly, whenever I say that, please take with a grain of salt. If you have an idea with it, go ahead and try it. In fact, let me know if it works. I'll be very curious, or we can have some conversation about how that played for you and why it worked well, or maybe maybe it was a good idea, but that would be better with another caster, things like that. I love talking about it. So, but me personally, I don't see any of the Kayas being the type of caster you want for this. So, next brings me to Chromac the Ravenous. And unfortunately, again, I am feeling a bit like he's not what he wants. What this theme does and what he sort of wants to play, I don't think really go together. Bestial does obviously benefit everything by turning off spells. There's a lot of stuff you can protect from. Invaluable Resolve is +2 armor and stops pushes and slams. So there's some strength to that as well. But I'm honestly just not I'm just not really seeing it. I think Warpath and Wild Aggression are really the best spells on his list. His feat doesn't help anything else with that. I'm not saying there isn't something here. In fact, Warpath needs Destroys, so you're going to have to choose not to snack if you want to trigger Warpath. Chromac 1, unfortunately, even though thematically he's the one one of the ones that we would like to see playing this theme, I just don't think that it fits with him, unfortunately. Now, the next caster, Chromac 2, Chromac Champion of the Worm, this is one of those instances where the theme benefits him, therefore the theme is worth consideration. So most people would immediately go put him in Call of the Wild, especially once the corpse model unit that I talked about in Minions comes out, right? Because they can just give him corpses. But the biggest benefit here is I talked about that the number of corpses you get makes a pretty big difference on playability. And in this instance, Chromac himself being able to start with 3 corpses, I think is really critical. Because what it means is through the entire game, you can potentially have Chromac contributing to your game plan. And I think if you're going to play a caster like Chromac 2, he needs to be contributing to your entire game plan. So this theme really only benefits doing that. There are a few different ways I build it, but personally I would look at getting very close to exactly 30 points, including your free models, of Tharn and probably stopping there because the rest of his benefits really want a big battle group. The version I've theorized is full unit blood trackers with Nuala and then 2 Tharn Ravager Shamans. Now the Tharn Ravager Shamans are really interesting for a couple reasons. One, they one of the things they do is provide Chromac the ability not to be knocked down, which is really, really good, you know, if you want to be a pretty aggressive Chromac. They also are, they're mat 7 on their own, POW 12. They have access to Chain Lightning, so now you can, with Carnage, you can get them up to mat 9, which is pretty reliable for killing a model. They can still get corpses of their own, so they can sort of go in, you know, theoretically kill every model that's within 2 inches of them and shoot out a Chain Lightning to dig even deeper or kill even more models. Or they can kill some models and then Battle Wizard their no knockdown spell. They also bring you an additional source of magic weapons. So all things that are really cool. You could go, there are some other versions. I think you could go with like 3 units of Blood Reavers and 2 Night Witches if you wanted to go that route. There's some options, certainly. You could go like, you could also go Blood Trackers, Nuala, Blood Weavers, and Night Witch, something like that. The rest, I think you want to fill up mostly with Chromac's Battle Group. You may need to play with it. Maybe you need a unit of Shifting Stones in there for some Fury management. But for the most part, that's how I would build Chromac in this. And I'm actually very excited to see what that looks like. I have not had a chance to play it. But with Chromac 2 being on the ADR, I'm probably going to test this version of the list out. I don't know if it's going to be stronger than Call of the Wild. I did talk about this. With that, I still think Chromac absolutely wants a Whirlpool Stalker. And I think he still wants Getorix. And then I think after that, you kind of build however you'd like. I think you want a source of Primal. But other than that, I think there's a lot of different options. So the other thing is he can use his corpses to heal himself. He uses his corpses for the same thing everybody else uses them for. He has Grievous Wounds, which is really good. You need to be getting a lot of work done with Chromac. But if you play him in the Steam, I think you can, and I think you get a leg up on doing that. So I definitely recommend him here, but here with the minimum amount of infantry probably, and sort of then maximizing your battle group. Okay, that brings us to Kruger the Stormwrath, Kruger 1. The first caster, honestly, that I played in this theme, thank you to Colin Hill from Australia. He's the one who came up with this, and I just straight up stole it and played it. And we've talked a little bit about it. I think he actually kind of digs that some people are playing his list. So I like to give him credit, though. But with Kruger 1, I think is very strong with this theme, and primarily because he brings a very difficult range skew. So this is one of those cases where I would play 75 points of infantry. And in this case, what it's been for me is 2 units of Ravagers, both with detachments, 2 Shamans, a White Mane, 2 units of Blood Weavers, 2 Blood Weaver Night Witches, and the Death Wolves. That gives you 8 corpses. You put those on the Death Wolves. Your battle group is a Gorax and Getorix, which is extremely light, of course. But you need Getorix is important specifically because you need the most killiness you can get, and he's also relatively survivable because he can give himself that +2 armor. And the Gorax because you want Primal, because if you do need to use Getorix to kill a hard target, you need that Primal probably to do it. And then you also just need a Fury Battery, and the Gorax can stay back. You need those beasts to score zones and things as well. And the strength of this list is with the +3 defense against ranged and magic attacks spell, Gale Winds, that, and as well as removing clouds your enemies put up, that Kruger 1 has, makes pretty much, and you have no knockdown tough on top of that. So it sort of makes it, like on paper, it looks kind of like, what does this list do? But on the table, the Ravagers just always live longer than they should. The Death Wolves have 8 corpses between them, so they're near impossible to kill. Most people just ignore them as a result of that, and they actually can hit pretty hard if they get all those attacks off. The Bloodweaver's heal effect on Death Wolves is fantastic, because if they do use it to remove a couple hit points and you heal them back up, they're great. Ravagers, after they tough, healing back up is great. Excuse me. And basically, you just get more models across the table than you would think. You're not going to crack huge armor values. I have won some games where the armor values were way higher than you would think, but like if they have one colossal, you're kind of okay. If they have light warjacks, you're kind of okay. If they have lightly armored heavy warjacks or war beasts, you're kind of okay. Or if you can sort of jam them out of scenario, you're okay. But other than that, this is sort of the list you want to take into an infantry fight. Because between Kruger's feet, Kruger's lightning tendrils, and all of these models, you will kill infantry. It will be dead. So that's what this list is doing. Pardon me. This is not the type of list you want to play into an armor skew, though. You are not going to have success there unless you can really engineer some interesting stuff. I did manage to get a win against Amon once with it because he didn't know magic his Templar with Fortify on it, and the one thing Fortify does not stop his throws, so I managed to throw it over his Amon, and I got, I think I got the Death Wolves on him and killed him. Pardon me. I've been dealing with a little bit of a seasonal nonsense, so today's show's been kind of all over the place. Anyways, that's all on Kruger the Stormwrath. Kruger the Stormlord, he's not really the caster I've looked at to play this. If you know for sure that you were dealing with Signar, Kruger's lightning immunity as well as his spell, Windstorm, will still probably be better than the +3 defense in a lot of cases. But other than that, I like Kruger 2 with some of the other themes a little bit better, I would say, because it's pretty tough to get enough TK value with that many models. Gallows is strong. Obviously, TK and their models can be strong. But Kruger's not really bringing a whole lot else to the table. He's just keeping models safe. I think Kruger 2 is generally better with fewer higher quality pieces than a lot of mass numbers like this. So not exactly where I would recommend, but it could be built. Mosar the Desert Walker. So Mosar is really interesting in this theme. I do know a couple people have had some success playing this, sort of in that same vein, I think, as the Kruger 1 list. So some trade-offs though. His defensive tech is only Pillars of Salt. So you're sort of banking on your Ravagers using what's on the table and using their native stats, which are a little bit better than you sort of would expect. 13-15 with tough and 5 wounds makes them a little bit tougher to kill than you'd imagine. They usually survive a little bit more than people think they will. Is good. This is one of the themes where he does have access to really good Sands of Fate targets. I think the Bloodweavers are probably the best in the game because they are speed 7, so they can run 14 inches. If you need them to go farther, you put Mirage. They effectively run 16 inches. And they're cheap. The only models that we have access to that do this that are cheaper are Wolves of Orboros, and even then it's only by a slim margin. Additionally, I think he's always played kind of pretty good with Blood Trackers because Mirage is a good benefit for them. Curse of Shadows ups their damage. I think those same benefits apply to Wolf Riders. Curse of Shadows is particularly interesting with Cav models because you can sort of more safely impact attack. So if you want to charge and see how your impact attacks will do, but not fail your charge, Curse of Shadows lets you continue through the model. So it's actually a really potentially good benefit to have. And obviously they like the armor. The armor debuff helps their damage output pretty considerably. I've talked about them on some other episodes. I think, if not, we'll probably be talking about them again soon. But getting a damage a damage buff to them makes them very strong. They're already naturally pretty accurate because they get boosted charges. One of the things I think Mosar does not want to leave home without, unless he's playing in a theme that doesn't allow living beasts, is a Wild Argus, because him being able to put Doppler Bark anywhere on the table is an extremely strong benefit. It might be the strongest spell that's not on his list, basically. It's stronger than some of the ones on his list. So, and then so that's the that's the benefits for Mosar, really. Mirage is good basically on all this stuff. Like 2 more inches on some of the threat ranges that we've already talked about being very long is quite good. Curse Shadows upping the damage is quite good. Pillars potentially are okay. I would say Sunhammer is going to help you whittle away some of those models when they're bringing infantry, or sorry, when they're bringing War Beasts or War Jacks. Some of being able to chip away a few damage a turn is actually way better than people give credit for. Yeah, so and his feat's sort of interesting if they have a larger battle group as well, so you might get more leverage out of him than that. Mozart's another caster. He takes a lot of time to play, a lot of time to perfect. I know some people have done it. I may be checking him out again because of ADR as well. This is one of the themes I probably will look at him in if I go that route. So just keep in mind he doesn't have any major defensive tech like some of those other casters that I've mentioned already. So that'll be it for Mosar. Morvana the Autumn Blade. So she's really in a really interesting place right now. I actually think she's decently strong. I've not seen a lot of attention in this theme given to her, but I think this is a theme she can play in. Your targets here for her regrowth, which is her recursion spell, are Tharn Bloodweavers and Tharn Blood Trackers. I think of the two, the Blood Trackers are probably still a better option. Her +2 armor spell, though, is pretty good on Ravagers, pretty good on Wolf Riders, pretty good on Death Wolves, can be pretty good on Lord of the Feast, and can be good on any of our living beasts as well. Harvest means that she's always kind of winning that infantry fight, so that's something to consider. And then her other spells also help her continue winning that infantry fight. Her theme, putting more forest down, is only good for Ravagers, things like that. So I think there's something there. I haven't quite worked it out. I did play one game with her in the theme. My opponent was not the most seasoned, and I think he just didn't really know what to do about the whole situation. And I don't think it was a good example of whether or not the list was good. I do think you do Blood Trackers and Noelle in the list to maximize the size of that unit. You got to watch out for RFP with any recursion, and there is a little more of that right now. And I've seen she's a little bit more popular in other themes that I've seen for people who've been looking at her. But I think there is something here in this theme for her. You're going to be playing a longer, grindier game, so keep that in mind from the outset. But I think she has some game. Then moving on to Morvana 2, Morvana the Dawn Shadow. Again, I think she has game. Actually, that style of list with Kruger 1 that I mentioned, she has 1 less War Beast point, so you would downgrade your Getterix to a Stalker. You'd be playing down a point probably. You can actually bring a Gobber Chef now for that 1 point if you want. You might be able to. Oh no, I'm sorry, you can't do that because it's a War Beast point. So you're just out of point. Excuse me, but so she's trading out Gale Winds for Fog of War. So Fog of War is nearly as good. It's concealment, so it's +2 defense. Some things do ignore concealment, so that's not as good. Also, you can't stack concealment on top of it, which you can with Gale Winds. But it's close. So she brings Fog of War. She brings some rerolls, which can be strong if you can position for them. Fog of War also triggers Prowl, so on the Stalker and on the Death Wolves, they're just going to get stealth, which is obviously a nice boon. Like I said, she has the rerolls if she positions so that she can take advantage of them. She herself is way more threatening in melee than a Kruger 1 is. So there's that aspect. Carnivore is sort of a mixed bag. The problem with it is a lot of the things that you want to trigger don't. So a lot of the things you do trigger on Destroyed. Not Lightning Strike anymore on the Stalker, so that's at least good. But like Ravagers would go up to Mat 9, but they're not going to get corpses, and they're not going to get overtake triggers and things like that. Let me double check that on the corpses. But I believe they would not. And I believe it is not optional to RFP. Yeah, it's just removed from play. And then Morvana heals. And then I believe, and we're going to double check, do it live. Yeah, Heart Eater specifies destroy. So if you don't destroy, no heart. So there's some count, like that's not great, but it is good if you're still going up against something like a Legion Heavy that's higher defense, and you're not really going to be reliably looking to get corpses from them anyways, but you need the hit buff. It's fine on something like Wolf Riders if you're getting in melee. If they need that a little extra push. It won't trigger Quick Work for the Blood Trackers. Keep that in mind. It won't trigger Killing Spree for the same reasons on the Blood Weavers if you have the positioning down for that. So that's a little bit of a frustrating benefit for them. On the other hand, it's still there. It's still +2 to hit when you need +2 to hit. So Death Knell is still an okay spell. Sunder Spirit's one of the better ranged nuke spells, and her feat being able to bring. So I mean, really, this is the other reason you play her. I think Fog of War is reason one, and then you're closing it out with the fact that trying to play for attrition against her. So those Ravagers under Fog of War, who I mentioned, are going to be, they're about as hard to kill as they were under Kruger 1. Not quite as hard, but close. And now, let's say you kill, let's say we have the 2 full units of Ravagers for the sake of argument. Let's say you kill 5 out of each unit. She's just going to feat and those are back, right? She can feat for 10, heal herself a little bit, position safely. And now you've got to kill another 10 Ravagers. There's a lot of lists that just don't have the ability to do that. It's not going to happen. So I think that's where her strength is with this team. I would like to see Censure on her card be something a little bit more relevant, or maybe one of those 2 damage spells become a little bit of a buff. But for now, that's where she is. I think she's playable here. Yeah. And then we're almost through. Haven't even gotten to the best ones yet. To continue along, Tanith Feral Song. So every one of these things I've done, I've talked about Tanith. Tanith is absolutely still probably our best all-around caster. She does not have defensive tech for this list either, so that's very relevant. But what she does have is Affliction, which helps make sure you deal a damage no matter what, as well as being a to-hit buff. She has her Shadowbind Gun, which is a to-hit buff. She has Scything Touch, which helps with damage, especially most specifically if you're doing melee attacks is where it's going to really shine the most. She has Admonition for her battle group. She can take Loki, which can really help with a lot of positioning stuff, and he's just good, and he's a shield guard and stuff like that. She can take Swamp Gobbers now, which is really key because Loki, Stalkers, Death Wolves, and herself with Prowl all really like that. Be able to bring those for positioning reasons. Trying to think. With her, I would recommend. Interesting thing. If you get the position for it, because of Affliction, something like the Tharn Bloodweaver Night Witch can just kill stuff. It's disgusting. Because of Grievous Wounds specifically, she just has to hit, and she's already mat 7. So you're going to mat 9, stuff with Shield Wall and Iron Zeal and stuff, it just is not. It doesn't stand up very well. So I do think Tanith's strong here. I would look a little bit more at the stealth Tharn because they will keep themselves safe. But similar to Mosar, you're playing her for those other benefits, and then trying to get up by using your spells and whatnot. You may want to bring a little bigger battle group with her, and so forth. Una 2, love her in this theme. That is one of the 2 lists I am seriously playing right now. I think there are a lot of ways you can build her. You can bring a lot of Blood Weavers. You can bring Blood Weavers and Blood Trackers. You can bring Ravagers. You can bring the Death Wolves. You can bring Lord of the Feast. You can bring Wolf Riders. I currently like her a ton with Wolf Riders because with Hand of Fate they are amazing. But Hand of Fate is good on all of that stuff, and that's one of the really strong reasons to bring this theme with her. I still would not bring less than 5 Griffins with her, Scarsfells, and a Gorax. But after that, you can just go crazy with whatever Tharn you want to bring to adjust the matchup. Tharn Wolf Riders do the most damage. The Death Wolves do a pretty solid amount of damage as well, depending on the number of corpses they have. The Ravagers are sort of the next sort of middle ground, so they do pretty solid damage, but they're a little they're going to be a little bit better of a bet against infantry since they can get pick up corpses to do overtake and whatnot. Blood trackers can get a lot of attacks against infantry potentially as well. Blood weavers bring the magic weapons and the RFP, so that will help your matchup against like Cricks. I think the Ravager Shaman, the Ravager White Maid actually is not a bad recipient of Hand of Fate once in a while. I've actually chewed through a lot of things with him, and he gets a few corpses. So Unatu is fantastic in this theme. I don't think it's the only theme she can play in. I think most people are focusing on Call of the Wild with a little bit of Secret Masters. We'll talk about that when we get to that theme next week. But I think she is fantastic in this theme. We finally kind of, the last week and this week, these are two of the really good themes that are in the next week. I think we'll talk about the third one. And then finally, Wormwood, another fantastic person for this theme. Do keep in mind you're probably still going to want to be bringing Shifting Stones, but Ravagers love his feet. Blood Weavers are cheap souls, and they work pretty well with stuff. Curse of Shadows, we already talked about why that's good. Hellmouth kills plenty of infantry on its own. And positioning stuff. Stranglehold can be pretty strong for like letting your Ravagers kill infantry and then keeping their heavies at bay while you sort of like pick them off. Things like that. I played it with 2 Ravagers, 2 Shamans, 2 Chiefs, Death Wolves, 5 Corpses, Stalker, Gorax, and some Shifting Stones, and it worked out okay. I don't love it. I think there was some better builds probably than that, but it was solid, and it's pretty, like, you can kind of play into a lot of things with it. So, pardon me. So that is, that's Devourer's host, basically. I've gone through everything. All the casters, most of the interactions that I can think of. I think it's a fantastic theme. I think it may still remain one of our better themes, and for the biggest reason that it's one of the themes that can bring infantry, I think, have a little bit of an edge right now because of the scenario. In general, Ravagers right now, Death Wolves, even Wolf Riders, there's a limit to how much armor they can crack, but I don't think that limit is too... I think it's in a good place, basically. To wish list a little bit, so one, we already know, this is the theme. That's going to be center of our theme release. It's going to be Tharn. There's a Warp Husky right there, at the top of the stairs. Oh, there she goes. You never know with them what they're going to do. We know that our theme that we're going to be focusing on is going to be the Tharn, so this theme is going to be front and center, which is great because that's going to afford us some of the sort of a few things in there that could be tweaked. Like I think the Tharn Ravager, the Tharn Wolf Rider Champion could use a little looking at. I think 8 points is a bit costly, and you can't take it for free anywhere either. So because that would compensate obviously. I think the Blood Pack could use a little tweak. Lord of the Feast could use a little tweak, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So that's great. We know our Warlock is a female Tharn Warlock. Her name is Iona the Unseen. So that implies to me some of the sneakier aspects of our faction, which is great. I really hope she focuses a lot on... Because the one thing this list is poor at, or this theme is not great at, is because you want to take a lot of Tharn, but you need them to sort of do a lot of work, so you want that damage output, and I hope that that's something she focuses on, is really buffing up the Tharn infantry and Tharn warrior models, because we have plenty of casters that do the battle group thing, so I hope she does more of the infantry thing, and we'll see what that looks like when when that gets in CID. I would love a couple more solos, like maybe another character solo or two. I've always thought Nuala as a Wolf Rider would be really cool. So like Epic Nuala, if you will. It would be nice. We don't have like a Warlock attachment that we can take in this theme. That would be pretty cool. What else? I think the Blood Pack could certainly benefit from getting a command attachment. So that's an aspect to look at. The Blood Weaver is certainly a place to get a command attachment. I'd love to see like Blood Weaver magic users, like Blood Weaver witches of some, maybe like a 3 model unit or maybe like a character unit of any of these would be great. Anything that takes more advantage of our corpses, any way that we can get corpses better. I mean, I know we have the minion option coming, but it would be great if we had like a Tharn option so that it benefits, it's more internal. I've seen jokes about the Tharn treehouse. I don't know. Structure and circle would obviously be pretty cool. So anyways, I think there's a lot of really cool things. I think the Tharn are very cool. Sort of the savage side of circle a little bit more. And I look forward to seeing a lot more of that stuff come out. So anyways, we're now rounding out about an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. But as always, I'd like to thank Griffin's Roost Painting, providing all the awesome painted stuff that I use. And Muse on Minis, they continue to do great work. I love their tokens, and I need to update their website to have more of my shows on there. But, they've supported me thus far, so I want to keep thanking them. Next week, we will be... I'm planning still... I know I talked about the splitting up into different shows, but next week I'm planning on Wednesday, again, unless something comes up, to do part 4 of this series. We will be talking about Secret Masters, and then the week after we'll hit up on the Wild Hunt. At some point, I'll do a little more in-depth look at champions in Season 7 with our ADR and sort of some ideas around that. I need to, I sort of mentioned this, but I need to kind of look at both our options and the other options before I can really feel like I have some good recommendations. So anyways, that'll be it for this episode. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, always feel free to hit me up on the interwebs somewhere. And until then, thanks for watching.